So I wanted to discuss one of a conceptual subtlety that is related to um, the matrix, right? That we are using the measurements that we're using to test model efficiency, right? Now we again are working with a Titanic model, and as I said before, it's a model where we want the higher accuracy. But as I said before, also that you don't always want a higher accuracy in your model. Some cases you are interested in some other metric that you want to be higher, right? Now the recall, right? So now we um so in some cases, right, we want the recall to be high, right? If let's say we are predicting the survival probability, right? So in our case, the model is predicting, if a model predicts a positive to be a negative, right? So that's a false negative, and if a negative is predicted as a positive, so it's a false positive, right? Now, let's say that we are not doing the survival a Titanic problem. We're, let's say, testing disease detection, right? Now in that case, the picture changes, right? If you think about the problem, you have to be more careful with your false positives and false negatives, right? If, for example, there's a patient that has cancer, right, and the model says that the patient does not have cancer, right, then that model is not good, right? You don't want that. So let's say that this one means, so in that case, let's say one means cancer or any other disease like diabetes, and then 0 means no cancer. Now in this case, you want to reduce this one, right? The person has cancer and the model says that the person does not have cancer. So you want to decrease, so in that case you want to decrease the situation, right? In other words, you want your false negatives to be low. And that means that your recall is going to be high, right? And therefore, we say that the cancer detection problem is a high recall problem. And there is a trade-off between precision and recall. Like if you look at the graph, let's say we change the parameter called the threshold, right? It's sort of like, the graph goes like this. So let's say this is recall. This is let's say precision. Right? Now in this case, you when you increase recall, your precision decreases, and so this is what I mean by that trade-off. That if you decrease one of obviously if you decrease the denominator over here, your overall precision will increase, right? And overall recall will increase, and then the precision will decrease, right? Okay, now let's discuss a different scenario. Let me clear the ink. Okay, so now let's look at banking, like a financial industry problem. Now let's say that you're looking at transactions, and you know that when you are making if you guys have used credit cards, you know that sometimes you get a message that, okay, this transaction was triggered as a fraudulent transaction. So it's most likely a machine learning algorithm behind that message. And then that message is double checked. So obviously there are millions of transactions going on every day, and then you cannot have people checking those transactions. So there are machine learning algorithms that look at different variables to check whether a transaction is fraudulent. For example, like you make a transaction, one transaction in the morning is over here, the next one is in, one is on the East Coast, the next one in the evening is on the West Coast. So that might be labeled or identified as a fraudulent transaction. So in that case, you let's say 1 means that it's a fraudulent transaction, 0 means that it's not a fraudulent transaction, right? Now in this case, you have a model, let's say, that that looks at a transaction that is fraud, that is actually fraud, and then it identifies that as not fraud. This is really not a big issue, like especially if it's like these are very low percentage of transactions usually. But if your model is, let's say, if a transaction is not fraudulent, and you your model labels it as being fraud, then that can be an issue. If your model is doing that a lot, then the problem is that you might lose customers. So what is this? This is a false positive, right? So you want to make sure that your false positive is lower in this case, right? Otherwise, you will lose customers. If I'm getting a message every day from my bank that, or my credit card company, that you're making fraudulent transactions, then obviously, any person can get irritated and they might lose a customer. So this is like the customer churn problem. So so in this case, your false positive should be low, and that means that your precision is going to be high, overall precision. And then because of that trade-off, the recall would be low. And so fraud detection is is what we call a low recall and high precision, in this case you want less false alarms, right? So this is the whole concept, right? Keep this in mind, that accuracy is not always the metric that you're looking at when you if you, let's say, end up as a data scientist in a company. You have to look at the problem that is in hand and see what type of metric is the more relevant one. You have to look at your customers. You have to look at different situations where you want to make sure sometimes that you don't identify people wrongly with fraudulent transactions. And if you're in the medical industry, you have to make sure that you are more careful with patients and have more tests, because having more tests is fine, but not identifying patients with the disease is more dangerous.